So, can I ask you about your interactions with Ram Dass? How did you come about to meet Ram Dass? So now people don't know who Ram Dass is. He wrote a famous. He was a professor at Harvard. He was friends with Timothy Leary. And they took acid and psilocybin and mushrooms together, and that was the beginning of his. He realized when he took mushrooms that what he was doing with psychiatry was child's play, and that you could leapfrog it through this. And so he set out because mushrooms wear off and acid wears off. He wanted to get to a place where it didn't wear off, and so that led him to India, and he met. This guy.
Yes.
He met the, let me see. Baba, Neem Karoli Baba. He met this guy. This guy read his mind. Ram Dass goes to India, meets this guy. This guy reads his mind. So now, what do you make of that stuff? That when Ram Dass tells lots of fantastical stories, they're almost like stories of Jesus from the Bible. He walked on water and he stopped the storm and he fucking turned 3 bottles of wine into all this shit. You know, it's like, and he has all these stories about this guy doing that. This very almost similar things, just as fantastical. And you know, they say as the atheists are famous to say that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Now, there's no evidence for any of that. Dude, what do you make of that stuff? Now, I tend to believe it because either Ram Dass is a bullshitting grifter who just never cashed in, right? Or he's telling the truth. Because if he's a bullshitting grifter, he never cashed in on it. So that wouldn't make sense to be a bullshitting grifter if you're not going to cash in on it. So
but I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah,
it would be like a faith healer who lives in his fucking in a trailer. It's the you know what I mean. He must really believe it, you know. So I think Ram. So what do you make of that?
Well, I think like I can remember like I said my cynical thing that I said to Raghu was, this is in the early phases of this, like coming to understand the philosophy that Ram Dass teaches. I remember saying, do you ever think maybe like y'all were like in your 20s on a bunch of acid in India and this whole thing is just kind of like reliving the glory days? You know what I mean? Like that was my dark assessment. And I still remember because I was at one of these retreats where in beautiful Hawaii, and he got the biggest smile on his face and laughed so hard and was like, I see why you would think that. I totally see why you would think that. And they all just whenever I have said, come on, are you gonna tell me he can, so he could be in 2 places at once? Come on. I know that the Brotherhood of Eternal Love was traveling through India dispensing LSD to everybody during the time that they were there, and I know Maharaji was munching LSD with them because he thought it was funny, because the West had found this like very temporary yet real form of the way Neem Karoli Baba put it when Ram Dass had given him a mega dose was, and he was just acting completely normal after. Do you know that story, Jimmy?
Yeah. So
when Ram Dass gave him acid.
Yeah. So
it's a great story. I won't tell it, but it's interesting.
Well, I'll tell it. It's real quick. Ram Dass, when he goes to India, he brought with him some acid and some special doses, some high doses of some friends had made for him.
Do you know who made it?
No.
Owsley. Kid Charlemagne from Steely Dan, that song is a song about Owsley, the guy where you see the dancing bears. He whipped up a special batch of LSD just for Ram Dass to take to India. Of course, at the time his name was Alpert, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Owsley acid.
So he gets there, but he reads his mind. He reads Ram Dass's mind. And then I don't know if it's at that same moment or another moment, he said, you got that medicine? And he knew, he goes, yeah. And he shows it, he goes, give me it. So he gives him one of the tabs of acid, which is a big dose, and he goes, no, give me all of it. So he gives him all this acid, which is like just beyond a heroic dose.
Yes.
And he talks it all, and he just sits there and he goes, see? And what I took from that story was
no, Jimmy, he didn't do that.
What did he do?
He went under his blanket and he started moaning and gibbering. He went under his blanket and he started shaking and moaning and like gibbering and making weird noises. I heard this story there because Ram Dass told it, but I've heard people who were there and watched it happen.
What happened? Tell me.
Well, Ram Dass thought he'd killed an old man by overdosing him on acid. So the look on his face, I don't know if you've ever I don't know what psychedelics you do. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of maybe having a little of a tolerance and then you forget and you offer your friend maybe the dose that you take. And then you're like, oh my God, what have I done? My friend wasn't ready for that amount of whatever. So Ram Dass, the way I've heard it is that the way he tells the story, he makes himself seem a little more cool than he actually was. And he admitted he was freaking out. People are like, he was like, oh, fuck. He was probably thinking they needed to call an ambulance because Maharaji was really putting on a show. And then he pulled the blanket up and was laughing. And then went completely just about what his day without any sign of anything at all. And, but what he was, he was trying to, she was showing some attachment that Ram Dass, the psychiatrist Ram Dass had to Western medicine. And that, they were in this weird pissing contest, weird, you know what I mean? Which is like, my medicine, this is my medicine. And Neem Karoli Baba was trying to show him like, yes, on this level, it is scary and powerful. And I don't know if he was even putting on a show or just letting himself be in that level of like, but then he popped out of that level to also show like, you don't have to be there. And this thing that you have given me, he said, it brings you in the presence of Christ. And we used to have something like this in the Indus Valley, is what he said, which is interesting. There used to be something like this in the Indus Valley. Who knows? Some psychedelic. But the miracle stuff is real. And I can say that non-anecdotally. And I'll tell us a brief story about it that happened to me. And I have not been, my meditation teacher has not told me that I can't tell the story, though I think it would make him, I'm sorry, David, if this makes you feel, I do a podcast. I don't think he would care, but he doesn't make a big deal out of this stuff. But I can remember once I was just thinking, because we were like, I can't remember what it was he was telling me. The problem with these people, man, is like the shit that you run on people and all your tail feathers and stuff, it just doesn't work the way you would like it to. And so there can be for me, a lot of ego shit, man. I don't remember what it was that he had said or what in the interaction that I felt dissatisfied with. But I remember thinking to myself, I bet he would punch you in the face. I don't even know why I thought that. I just thought, I bet he'd punch you in the face. And I looked at my phone and he had just sent me a text saying, the real punch is you meditating every day. What is that? What's that?
So that
I don't know.
Carl Jung would call that synchronicity.
Yeah, synchronicity.
That is, but as a coincidence that has meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
yeah,
not,
and that's one little thing. Having been around these people so much and seeing things like that happen, like, and being very like, there's no like trying to Carl Sagan my way out of it, or trying to, you know what I mean? Like, well, we remember the hits, as they say, and all that stuff. I think they would agree with that, saying like, if you get too caught up in that miracle shit, then God damn, now it's gonna be really easy for you to get taken in, because the problem is these cities, as they're called, SIDHIS, cities. Stand-up comedy is a city. When you see a great comic performing and you feel the room, if you think that's just somebody telling stories and moving around, and there's not like energy going out into the room. It's a thing. It's something to it. So that's a Siddhi. It's
a Siddhi is like a special power, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charisma, you know, or like hyper seductive people, or salesmen, you know,
yes.
people who could just sell you shit, you know, like,
yes.
you know, that thing. That thing can go into like, if you ever met anyone who does neuro-linguistic programming?
No.
NLP?
Oh. I know what it is, but no, Tony Robbins talks about that.
Yeah, well, apparently initially it was meant to help people with trauma and stuff, but it got, you know, suctioned up by the pickup artist community.
Yes.
And became this like manipulative, like weird form of tantric black magic. And like, man, I don't know how true any of this is, but when I was in India, I remember somebody telling me a story about how like a lot of the like quote holy men up there will like seduce tourists, and they fuck them, and like they do weird magical stuff. They make them come so hard that they become like completely captured by their power. And we like, it's not always great. It's not always, so those things, I think the reason they try not to like make them the nucleus of the story is because that means that if you see someone doing those things, you might think, oh, therefore they're good, or oh, therefore I should follow them, or oh, therefore this or that. And really those things, every single person I know has exhibited that stuff. They just brush it off, and they don't brush it off in a humble way. They're just like my teacher says, well, we share a mind, and not like you and me share a mind, but the idea that the mind stops where your face stops is not the case. Actually, it's like we share a mind. We share a mind.
Right. Well, you know, first of all, do you subscribe to the idea that we're all just a manifestation of consciousness? The unified field is consciousness. That is an ocean, and then there is a wave of energy, and we are the crest of that energy, and underlying it all is consciousness, and we're just a physical form manifestation of consciousness. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
And so consciousness was always here. So when you have, people like Sam Harris will tell you consciousness is a chemical reaction happening in your brain because of this and that. No. You are experiencing consciousness through your brain, the consciousness that has always fucking been here. That is the building block of everything, which is the Big Bang, which is the energy that is in you, can never be destroyed. It is that consciousness. And Carl Jung discovered that there is a collective unconscious. That definitely is.
Yeah.
And so he also started to get into the mysticism part of it, right? That's why
he did.
And that's why he didn't ever publish the Red Book, which was all that shit, and because he knew people would think he was crazy. And so he never published it. They didn't publish the Red Book until 2010. And he's been dead since like 63. So let me ask you a little bit more about Ram Dass and how you came to meet him. And
I'm sorry I didn't answer that question, man. The way I got to meet him was my mom died. I was laying in bed. I was so depressed, and you know, man, I was like the level of depression where I was gonna piss the bed instead of just get up and use the bathroom. I don't know if you've ever been there where you're just like, you know,
they've been worse.
I'll just okay. Well, I was like there. Raghu, who I'd been doing podcasts with and talking with and stuff, he just called me and said, listen, come to this retreat. Just go get a plane ticket and just trust me. Just come, just do this. And I remember getting the plane ticket, feeling like, oh boy, man, you're really, what is this? What's going to happen, man? This is probably pretty dumb. And I remember getting to Hawaii. I remember like this retreat, sitting in the room, there's Ram Dass in his wheelchair. And I like was looking at him and thinking, oh no, because it's his old body and he had a stroke. Oh no, is what I'm thinking. And this is the beginning of him teaching me, really. And he was never he was a wonderful teacher to me, but not like very ferocious with me, man. I remember he like, now he didn't say it to me, but I was definitely like, I feel like it was at me or at some of us there. He's like, don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like I'm my body. You are looking at me with all that pity, all that projection. You know, I'm fine. But in me, you know, you're seeing a body, and that's all you're seeing. That was the beginning of him, my first real like being in the presence of being like that. And then they were doing these fucking tours of spiritual Hawaii. I did not want to go look at waterfalls. I mean, at the time, man, I was very, very depressed, very cynical, completely judgmental of every single person there in a different way. And like, just feeling like they wanted me to sign a release to allow myself to be filmed. And I'm like, no, I am not signing that. Like, they're going to use it against me. I remember like the way they looked at me like, it's cool. You could just sit in the back. It's fine. It's fine. But I remember like, that's how paranoid I was. And then during the day, Raghu said, look, we're not going on this waterfall thing. Come with me. We got in the car, got stoned. He drove me to Ram Dass's house. Suddenly I'm in a swimming pool with Ram Dass and a Zen Roshi Joan Halifax, so I mentioned to you, who's somebody who works with the dying and is just like, God, all the shit I'm talking about, you can feel free to call me a spiritual bypasser and just like being a lazy procrastinator. I get it. And I don't think that critique's totally wrong. But like this person, she's an activist, and she doesn't just write books. She goes to like refugee camps every year to bring blankets to people. That's all she does is just help. All she does is help. And when you're around her, what's really cool is it's like, you know, they say like, I can't describe it. It's like a mountain or something. It's just, and it's not woo-woo bullshit. Like, it's not. And that was the funny thing about her Ram Dass is they were always arguing because she's a Zen Roshi. And like, this is Zen. And Ram Dass is a bhakti with a guru who believes in, you know, this idea of like, there being we're soul pods. And anyway, she's carrying him around in this pool and they are laughing like children. And they're throwing a tennis ball around the pool, and I'm petrified. I'm just like, you know, my mom had just died recently. I was just petrified, and I remember looking out at the sunset and feeling good, like what you said when you were touching that when that woman held your hands, feeling that. And I remember feeling that, all of it just for a second, it wasn't there anymore. And I remember looking at Ram Dass, who caught that moment, and he's looking at me and he goes, ah.
No fucking way.
Yeah. That was for me the big transmission from him, was just that, like that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's an amazing story. That's a great story. I'm so jealous of you.
Oh, well,
so jealous.
Thank you. I'm jealous of you, Jimmy. If I was his man, let me tell you something. You are fucking so funny. If I would just give me 15% of it. Listen, man, that moment was incredible. And I appreciate you being jealous of it. And I'm sorry for being so cynical up front. You know, the truth is if I might tell a very quick story, the problem with these retreats, man, is like these retreats are filled with like people who have meditated their entire lives, people who are friends with the Dalai Lama, literal like people who like, you know, like Owsley's wife comes still to the retreats, you know, like a whole mixture of the psychedelic community. And they would let me interview Ram Dass on stage. He thought it was funny that I was being cynical, and not in a mean way either. He just liked the questions. He liked it. But I remember like this fucking like Buddhist Lama in a Hawaiian shirt came up to me at the very end of the retreat and said, may I chat? He was being very polite. He's like, may I chat with you for just a second? And I'm like, sure. And he sits down and he's like, I respectfully just want to say that cynical thing you're doing, he goes, that's going to seem like bell bottoms in like a decade or two. That's going to be like when we used to say groovy, man. And that's my habituation. That's how I try to be cool. It's not real. It's a bunch of, oh, you'll never, that's my thing, And I think there's some probably deception there and laziness in it, because the truth is it's 100% possible. And, maybe just not this lifetime. And also I do think there's something to be said for giving up the Enlightenment project and picking up the love yourself project or be kinder to yourself project. Even if that, just a little bit kinder to yourself project. For me, that's what I have to do, because I don't know. Maybe I'm setting the bar too low. Let's get enlightened. Fuck it.
Yeah, let's raise that bar.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, if fucking Ram Dass could do it,
I don't know if he.
I know.
Would say that.
I know. I don't think so either. He says he's not a guru. He said that's why I relate so much to him, because when you listen to Ram Dass talk, first of all, he's fucking hilarious. He knows how to tell stories and jokes, and he knows how to just. Yeah. He could have been a top comedian.
Yes, absolutely,
easily, and he knows it. He knows he's performing. He knows how to do it. I like that because he knows how to make it fun for me. You know, and plus he also is enjoying it, and he didn't denigrate that. Not to mix things, but Chomsky says that he would implore people who could speak charismatically to not do so. He would wish people who were good speakers wouldn't do so that people could just actually have to rely on the ideas and not the personality of the person giving them to it. I understand what he means. He's wrong. And if Ram Dass doesn't see a fucking problem with it, I'm going to say he's right and Chomsky's wrong in that regard. But I understand Chomsky's sentiment. I understand his sentiment. He wants us to be judged on ideas, not on flashy personalities. I got that.
Right.
So now here's the one thing. So I never met Ram Dass. I always thought I would. I booked a show in Hawaii. I think because I saw you played there. I think you played that Hawaiian Brian's.
I didn't play it in Hawaii. So, but I might have been out there. You might have, I don't know. Who knows?
Anyway, so I book it and I thought for sure I'm going to meet him. And he died. And I was like, well, how could I be so off? Anyway, and then I didn't meet him and I didn't try harder.
Yeah.
I just felt like such a failure. I just felt like I'm never going to get this chance. Here's the one guy you relate to, Jimmy, the one guy you fucking connect with, and you're such an idiot. You never fucking went and met him.
Yeah.
And it just crushes me that I didn't get to meet him. And that's why I wanted to talk to you so much, because you knew him. And, and I just wanted to hear you talk about him.
Well, I mean, man, look, if you look at his teachings and you look at especially his teachings around death and what his philosophy was based around death, he would say, oh, well, actually you meet me every time you feel love. You meet me every time that you, he's another way to put it is when they say about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche dying, he's in the action now. So, which is I understand all forms of rejection of these ideas of the possibility of connecting with people who have dropped their bodies, but I would highly, and I'm not saying some prayer, oh, Ram Dass, come to me now. He would think that was ridiculous, but it is worth doing the experiment of like opening your heart up enough and understanding the longing for isn't for Ram Dass, is it? It's for what Ram Dass was. It's for love. And that's what you're longing for. And weirdly, one of my favorite sayings, the Krishna Das, who would play these kirtans at the retreat, said to me is, the longing is the grace. I don't know if you've ever heard that before,
no.
But there's in Bhakti Yoga, it's one of the ways we connect to God is through longing. That the longing for the divine is actually a completely bona fide form of spirituality. And in fact, in what's really cool about Bhakti Yoga is that you can even be the enemy of the divine. If you hate God enough, if you are angry enough at whatever the outflow of all things is, just because I didn't choose to be born, man, what the fuck? And if you get angry enough at that is considered actually a bona fide, very spiritual, very high state of consciousness, because at least you're acknowledging the divine enough to be fucking furious at it. That all methods of connecting to love lead to love, even if it starts with a sense of heartbreak over not getting to see in person Ram Dass. And so so there's your telephone line right there. There's you can talk through that line, even if all you get back is heartbreak. Because the heartbreak, oh, how lucky are you, man, to have your heart broken over not meeting somebody like Ram Dass. I would say that's a pretty good sign. Is there people whose hearts are broken over, not meeting, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. I'm trying to not sound harsh, but just name any kind of like shitty 60s. Who played Batman in the 60s? There's people whose hearts are broken over that. There's people whose hearts are broken over not having a riding lawnmower. And your heart's broken over not meeting Ram Dass. It's beautiful. I mean it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. He deserves that heartbreak too. I'll tell you that. He deserves that.
Well,
sorry.
It was weird that I just felt every time I would listen to him, it felt like it was coming from inside me. It just, I just felt such a connection to him that I never met him. I just felt like that I would look at him and then we wouldn't even have to talk, right. And I wanted to have that experience. And anyway, but you did, and that's great.
But there's like one of the exercises. It's just a thought experiment, man. That's what I love about Robert Anton Wilson and his encouragement to maintain agnosticism. You can, while maintaining a state of agnosticism, privately do a visualization where you sit in the presence of the guru, of Ram Dass, or any particular awakened being, and just see what happens. And if nothing happens, you don't have to tell anybody you did it. But you don't have to, because there is something vulnerable and embarrassing in modern society about invoking what a lot of very sophisticated, intelligent people like Sam Harris would consider to be archaic ways of inducing states of consciousness. And so there's a lot of like internal resistance to doing that kind of work. But sometimes I wonder if it, when I started realizing I could still connect with my mom after she died, and that it was really tough for me to like deal with that, really tough. And because time and space fold in at that moment, and there isn't a you or me, or there isn't a mom or a dad, there's just that possibility suddenly to reach out for things like Ram Dass or Neem Karoli Baba, or really, Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba, you could say, and I mean this with a great deal of respect, they were kind of like Macy's Day Parade floats, those big balloons, except they were filled up with love. And, you know, when the balloon pops, the helium goes in, it's still around, you know. That's a stupid way of describing it, but we get attached to the balloons, man. We get attached to the balloons. And the more when you meet people who have really dissolved themselves into love, like Ram Dass, there's not much there in the normal way. That personality thing, it did kind of, what are you going to do? He beams, you know, but it's not bullshit. I remember once we're going out on stage at this retreat where I was going to interview him. And I remember looking down at him and saying, I'm nervous. And he got that big Ram Dass smile and he goes, me too. And then we go out there. You know, it was in real time, whatever that thing was that he was. And it's still there, man. I mean it. It's still there. The balloon is not there. But yeah, it's still there. And I'm sure there's millions of Ram Dasses out there that we'll never even hear about. You know? I know it's there. God, I sound cheesy.
So one thing, you know, when he had his stroke, I heard him talking after he got his speech back a lot, right? So there was a time when he was always searching for words. There's a name for that. I don't know what it is, but he kind of overcame that pretty much, not all the way. And he was speaking much better towards the end of his life, right? He could find thoughts faster. And,
yes.
And he talked about when he had a stroke. And he said for a few months, for like 3 months, he was depressed. Because he thought his guru had left him.
Yes.
And so that's when I just decided to go hang myself, because if a guy like that gets depressed for 3 fucking months, what is a jagoff like me supposed to do when shit happens to me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That fucking guy got depressed? You got depressed? How am I supposed to get out of here? Yeah. Like, it just, that depressed me. The idea that he was able to get depressed. And then the same thing with, anyway, let's just keep it to him. But what do you think that, of course, he got out of it, right? 3, whatever. Yeah. And then he needed to have this thing happen or whatever. But Jesus fucking Christ, man. If that guy, it just makes me feel like I'll never get there. Just like you were saying before, it's hopeless.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a wonderful, that to me is like that was the real beginning of it for me, is when I just let myself like do what you just did. I think like, you know, what a relief. You know, you just give up the whole project. And I can remember once walking by a trash can and thinking, what if I just forget all this Ram Dass shit too? Just what if I could ball all of it up and just throw it in the trash can? Then what would I be? If all of it, all of that was just gone, and I just looked at it as another thing. I didn't feel very cynical about that, but it's just so easy to get trapped in these simulations that we run in our brain, you know, which is like, oh man, Ram Dass gets depressed. There's no hope for me. Is a great, very funny story. Very, very funny. And the truth is like, you know, I think this is why when like we lose a Kobe Bryant, everyone mourns in this particular way, not just because we lost this great athlete, because there's a collective shudder when we all think, holy fuck, if Kobe Bryant can die just like that some foggy morning, oh my God, what about me? And that's why I think when people like that go away, because we want to believe like Kobe's going to outlive me for sure. And so there's a collective shudder. And you know, speaking of like miracles, what I've heard in Buddhist teachers say is the great miracle actually is that most people in the world don't fully accept that they're going to die. So that's an amazing thing, isn't it? It's amazing. Our whole society, this whole thing is just constructed on this ridiculous conceptualization of us being around. Like you ever do that thing in your house when you realize other people live there? You know, and you're having that great conversation in your house and you're like, you're just a ghost already, man. You're like a little a little puff of meat. It's you're not going to be in that house forever. Someone else will be in the house, and they won't know you ever lived there, and that you had that intense moment with someone in that house. They won't even know that happened. They won't care. If they could find out, they wouldn't. Who gives a fuck? I don't care. I'm in this like cool vacation rental. I don't care. I don't care about the tantric sex that's happened in this fucking place or whatever. There's Buddhas everywhere. All I know is that hippies fucked here. Actually, I do care.
I'd like to know about the tantric sex. Actually, that's a. I think you want to. Maybe you want to. You want to rescind that? You want to retract that remark?
Yeah, I retract it. But the deep conversations before the tantric sex,
don't care.
I don't care. Don't care. I don't want to see. I don't want to see them. You know, but so that to me is like that's where the transcendence happens, is the beginning of like flying your attention into that place, into it. And I think that's what meditation is it's not stifling the thoughts, which is there. Apparently that is a way that there is a way you can stop your thoughts. The way I've been taught to meditate is not that at all. It's that the mind produces thoughts the way the tongue salivates. So it's it's just like, you know, your digestion, it's like gas. And so your thoughts will, like, you'll have some thought that seems so profound or so wretched, you know, and then because you had the thought that like, man, I wonder what would happen if when I was a kid, I'd killed my mom. That's a fucked up thought, you know, but like, it's not like you're typing into a keyboard, like, send me a shitty thought about killing my mom. It's like somewhere out of that, your psyche, this swamp bubble of weird Freudian aggression popped up in the form of this thought. And that's not you. That's just a thought. I mean, and all the other stupid thoughts are counting. I don't know if you do this or just like, sometimes I'll catch myself being like 1,000, 2 1,000. Like, what the fuck why am I counting? What the fuck is that? It's just a thought. It's nothing. It's just like it's a thing that my brain is bubbling up. And but because some people have certain thoughts that they think, oh my God, if I thought that must mean that's who I am or what I am. And then that's where in Buddhism that's called add-ons. And so that's the thing where you start getting into a feedback loop of neurosis, because you're locked onto one thought. And then the thought identifies you as, you think that must be me. And then because and then you just end up, in a psychologist's office maybe, which works. Because anytime I've gone to the psychologist and I admit the thought, whatever it is, or the guilt that I feel for not being a good enough son to my mom, they usually are like, you gotta take it easy on yourself. You're doing the best you can. You're not here that long. How are you gonna figure it out anyway? And that's what I've heard Neem Karoli Baba was like being around, except he and again, I have not experienced this, only heard it from people I trust with all my heart. And they said it was like being around someone who knew you completely, who knew every single thing about you, everything you've ever done, all your secret fucking bullshit that you've been hiding from the world, all of it, and loved you completely, and not loved you in some like fucking, like, I don't know, loved you like the way your best friend loves you in the worst moment of your life. Love, like it was like that, and not love like I want something from you. I'm gonna show this thing of love, but love like I see it, and I love it still, and that apparently that's the thing that would transform people permanently. Just that. I've only been around people who've been around that being, and just that has been enough to make me feel much better and make me feel less like a piece of shit. But unfortunately, I can't get rid of the complete feeling like it. There's still parts of me where I'm like, you're a fucking asshole, man. I can't, that's where I'm at. But you meet some people there who aren't, who are a little less hard on themselves than I am on myself.
That's the thing.
And,
This being self-critical leads to isn't that kind of the big, that's shame, right?
Yeah.
So I was brought up Catholic, so I have a lot of that. A lot of shame, a lot of self-judgment, a lot of and I always thought it was okay, Duncan, that I was hard on other people, because I was hard on other people, but it was always like, this is what you should be doing, and I would say it in very hard ways. Yeah. And what are you, being an idiot? Because you know if that's going to happen, you're going to be fucked up. You know that you're fucked up, and if you don't, and I always thought that was okay because I was the exact same way with myself.
Yep.
And then just recently, I realized that that's bullshit. That you don't have to be that way to people just because you're that way to yourself. Yeah, why don't you try to be most helpful in that moment instead of being fucking right? And that it changed me. And so it's still, the inertia is still the other way, but I catch myself now all the time. And
man, that's great.
And so, hopefully I could be easier on myself. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because that seems to be my biggest problem. And is that I think a lot of my anger comes from shame that I feel. And whenever that shame gets stimulated, I activate my anger to disconnect my feeling from my shame. And that just comes from me being self-critical and judging myself as not worthy. Right? What do you think about that?
I think it's a great analysis. I mean, that I think it's like your snow. We all have something that kicks up the snow globe. That is something that creates the sort of like temporary blizzard of neurosis, and shame and guilt. A lot of people who are raised in Catholicism have that, and this is something I've heard, which is, before you can reject yourself, you have to know yourself. So that's what I like about meditation is it's, you can't really fully reject yourself as being a complete monster until you really know yourself and not just the parts that are monstrous. and then after you've done the work and you have come to see the totality of your being, and you're like, see that it's all bad. At that point, you can be like, yes, I suck. But until you've done the work, you can't reject yourself. You can only look at parts of yourself that are challenging or that need work. And man, you got to cut yourself a break. I got a dear friend of mine. He was abused as a child. He got his teeth knocked out when he was just a little kid by a step parent. And I remember I was talking to him and he's like, but I did throw food. And I was like, how old were you? How old were you? Have you ever seen a child that age? And can you imagine for any reason knocking their teeth out? But that's how hard we are on ourselves. That shit gets burnt into us. And I'm hard on people around me too. It's one of my great regrets. It's a contamination. It's a temporal contamination because you come in, you don't know when you're born. And I've got this beautiful child, and my wife and I love him so much. But when you're born, and you're sitting in a shitty fucking couch with cigarette burns all over it, and your parents are smoking meth, and you're smelling meth smoke or whatever. You don't know that's not okay. You don't know it's not okay for your dad to knock the shit out of your mom or for your mom to knock the shit out of your dad. You don't know that's not okay. You just think that's life. And then that gets pulled into you. And have you ever heard the term cops in the head?
No.
Oh, it's like when I was in liberal arts school, I wish I could remember the political philosopher, but basically that is in inner city neighborhoods. If you police them enough, you don't have to police them as much anymore because people start naturally acting like there's cops everywhere, even when they're not there anymore. Cops in the head. I can't remember who said that. I'm sorry for not citing them, but that happens with that thing you're talking about. You absorbed it. It's in you because you absorbed it from something or someone or a lot of different things. And now that's why mindfulness is so great, because it's not like all you need is to recognize that's not all of you. That's just part of you. That's like a little that's a little hurricane in the subjective planet that you are. It's not you. But it's fucking painful, man. And I hate hurting people, and I hate watching that come out of me and looking at it and thinking, God, just, I don't want to hurt anybody, man. I don't want to hurt my son. I don't want to blow up and rage at my kid, or like, yeah. And so I think there's something to be, that's why there is something to be said for being a little less of a slacker when it comes to spirituality, like I am too. Because it's like, and that's what they say, is like we practice when things are going great, so that when things are going bad, we can get a little bit of space between ourselves and the usual go-to, which for me is anger, unfortunately. Yeah, that's my go-to if I'm afraid.
Really, me too. Yeah, that definitely. Well, Duncan, is there anything you wish I would have asked you?
God, no, man. It was such a joy chatting with you, man. I am so thrilled to hear that you were into Ram Dass. It's just the coolest thing, man. It's like, just makes you seem that much cooler to me. And no, I don't have anything. I'll tell you, there's a great book. I would recommend a great book that just came out by Sharon Salzberg. It's called, oh boy, Real Change. I'm going to look it up right now. I'm not, it's not an ad or anything, but it's like, you would love it. And I love her, and she's a friend of mine, and her book just came out. And it deserves to be read. It's perfect timing for the subject matter, which is sort of like, how do we do spirituality and activism in a way that works and isn't like, real change. Mindfulness to heal ourselves in the world. I just learned to read a few days ago. I need glasses, Jimmy. That's why I paused. Mindfulness to heal ourselves in the world, real change. It's so good. It's such a good book, and she is such a brilliant writer and so real. I highly recommend it. That's all I would say. Am I allowed to do that?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you.
Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.